Hello. Awesome. So like I said, next we have S.Y. Lee presenting on programmable IP. So I hand it off to him.
Awesome. GM. Hello, everyone. So this is S.Y. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Story Protocol. And we're here to present this idea of the programmable IP layer in the age of generative AI. And from the standpoint of creativity and intellectual property, I think the biggest thing about what generative AI is, it's a super abundance of content, right? You're pumping out content at a light speed that you've never seen before in human history. So it's just graph is just one of the examples. I'm sure that you can apply to many different forms of media, but it got to basically 15 billion images within 1.5 years, when it took photography, it took 150 years. And what's really behind this? How do we kind of conceptually understand what's going on? I think really Ben Thompson, who's the author of Statuary, actually captured this idea and explained this concept the most vividly. And he calls it the great AI unbundling. He basically says every technological disruption unbundles a part of a creative process, right? And if you think about what printing press, if you think about what writing and literacy has done, it unbundled consumption. Anyone can consume, right? And with the printing press, it has unbundled duplication, right? Replication. Anyone can copy. You can copy really at a cheaper cost. You can copy stuff really quickly. And what actually the internet has done is it unbundled distribution. You can just put up a blog, go on social media, create and distribute widely. Obviously, there's a huge cost in discovery, like during marketing costs, you need an algorithmic miracle to get your content found, but you can distribute it freely, right? Now, what generative AI has done is actually, it basically took away unbundled substantiation. You can just have a bullet points of your idea, and it substantiates the entire thing into a fully fledged prose, fiction, video, image, you name it. And probably the craziest thing I saw as a dog owner is this video. But I've tried to attempt, to take photos or videos of my dogs many times, but you never can get the dogs to look at your camera. But this captures it so quickly just by using like a sentence, right? So I think this higher resolution substantiation content is going to just only exponentially increase the data that's going into the AI system. The amount of compute is just exponentially increasing. Actually, after 2010, the Moore's law for the compute has gotten from 20 months to 6 months. It's just doubling every 6 months instead of 20 months. And the same way for data, right? It's exponentially increasing. So when you have this infra of data and compute getting fed into this model, exponentially increasing, obviously you get a higher resolution substantiation of content, right? And the pace of generation of the content is going to only increase. So what it is an exponential growing abundance of content, right? Exponentially is growing. When it's exponentially growing, I think everyone is excited by the tech and just getting the text to advance as soon as possible. But I don't think the gating item in AI is actually speed and performance. It's actually now the IP. It's attribution, provenance, and compensation. How are you going to compensate and attribute the data that's being fed into the models, right? That's going to be the gating item, and I just want to explain why we think so. But obviously, you're already thinking about, okay, like, doesn't the compensation, attribution, provenance, can that be just like adjudicated by the existing legal infrastructure, IP infrastructure, which is the copyright law. And copyright law, if you think about it, it's actually doesn't know how to deal with what's happening with generative AI. Because the entire copyright law, the intellectual property infrastructure that we have, is predicated upon the idea of mechanical reproduction. Okay, you copy this work, you copy that work, I'll sue you, and I'll try to resolve this in the court. We'll punish you. But the LLMs are not a reproduction machine, right? It's not a printer. It's basically capturing all the data, and it's getting to the essence of the data, and then creating something entirely new. It's a generative creative machine, not a reproductive machine. And copyright law, which is predicated upon the copyright, the concept of mechanical reproduction, doesn't know how to deal with this issue, right? Because more often than not, what's getting input in the content and what's getting out is entirely different, right? So how do you actually solve this intellectual property quagmire, right, in this circumstance? And just to kind of visually make it more intuitive, now I think with every single content disruption, you have this huge abundance of content. What is the first is printing press, the social media. Now social media made everyone a creator. Now with this taking out the entire process of substantiation, the generative AI is going to be basically carpet bombing the entire space of the internet. And with that, but the IP layer, right, IP layer that we have, which is copyright law, knows only how to actually deal with the previous generation of content. It doesn't know how to actually ascribe attribution, provenance, and compensation and incentivize creators in the right way when this generative AI content is happening, which is not a reproductive machine. It's basically a generative creative machine, right? And this is getting more and more visceral, actually, in the same way we had the Napster moment when we had the big copyright versus big tech. You have all these copyright holders going after, right? Going after OpenAI, Microsoft, Stable Diffusion. And there's going to be more and more lawsuits, class action lawsuits, all these things happening over and over. It's only going to increase. And I mean, interesting thing about just this lawsuits and just kind of looking at the legal documents. The first is that, I think this came out in the one of the legal documents for the New York Times is they're looking at, they're showing this Microsoft Copilot result about the New York Times article. It's basically making a synthetic output of that New York Times article in a much more expressive way, summarized. And the point here is that you don't need to really go to New York Times, right? You don't really need to go to the actual data owner's website and drive traffic there. You can just look at the actual, result and just be done with it, right? And I mean, I think it's, and what they're actually saying here is that at least big tech had the decency to show the hyperlink to the website in driving traffic there when you make a search. But now, all the traffic is just staying on their own AI interface, conversation interface, right? So, the big tech did kill a bunch of local newspapers, but and then got like the vast majority of ad market. But it had still a little bit of decency to bring some of the traffic to, these websites. But it's now all gone, right? Now all gone. And I find this perplexity answer machine really, really useful, and it's fun. And when you ask about what New York Times is actually writing about these days, it just gives an insanely great summary. I don't need to go to New York Times. And it's funnily enough, they're showing source links. But the whole point of perplexity is not, you don't even need to go to source links, right? So, this is happening. And I think what's happening at the moment is it's a classic tragedy of a commons situation, right? The internet is a commons, right? And this commons has a bunch of data, creative outputs that creators and authors and businesses are producing. And this data is actually used for profit by this big tech or LLMs. And there's no compensation back to this data holders and owners, right? And if this continues, who has the incentive to continue to create for the internet, right? You're pumping out all this content, but everyone's using it for free and creating their own thing, and they're getting the entire upside by charging for the LLM model, right? And I'm sure Perplexity is going to do the same thing. The ChatGPT is going to do the same thing. They're charging, right? Getting all these data for free and charging, right? And I think there are three visions in the current kind of the big tech world and the current kind of narratives around how to deal with this commons and how they're going to use this commons. The first vision is, I think, the Adobe model, which is a walled garden model. you're putting fences around your IPs. Okay, let's make just a model out of the IPs that we own. And that's Adobe has crazy ton of images. So I'm just going to make a model out of this. I'm not sure. Okay, they're supposedly trying to respect the rights of creators and entrepreneurs. But at the same time, this is not the most optimal thing for the creativity and entrepreneurship on the internet, because it stifles it. Only the owners of data can actually make these amazing models. So this walled model is not necessarily the optimal path. And there's an open and charging for it model, with this basically OpenAI. Okay, let's not have fences or an IP. I'm going to basically gobble up all the internet's data and then charge for it. This is kind of the worst, right? You get everything data for free and you make crazy ton of money. And Stable Diffusion, okay, it's the same way. Let's not put fences around the IP. We're not going to charge for it. But still, the creators don't actually make any money, although their IPs are giving so much utility to humanity and the internet, right? So we think basically if all three visions of the world basically drives us more towards tragedy of commons and actually turns the internet into barren land if this intellectual property issue is not fixed quickly, right? So we need to basically think about ways to solve this tragedy of commons and have incentive for creators to continue to innovate and to create amazing creative outputs, right? And to address this, we think we need a really better intellectual property infrastructure for the internet in this age of generative AI. And I just want to start by giving a historical context so that you can kind of create a mental model around how this can work, right? So basically IP infrastructure is not about just protection, it's incentivization. It's because the creators can now profit and make money from their creation, right? And every breakthrough in technology requires a new IP infrastructure. So always content technology outpaces the IP infrastructure development. And if you think about the first one, I said, is a printing press. You get insane unlimited copies of IPs really, really quickly. And when that happened, the authors didn't have any way to claim ownership around these copied works. And only when copyright law basically figured out a way to allocate ownership in these copied works, you saw, Shakespeare and Charles Dickens, right? Now you can profit from all these great works that you created. So now with the copyright law, there's a way to incentivize creators, right? And so the learning here is content abundance happens and the IP layer has to catch up to basically deal with and respond to and make a right incentivization mechanism for creators. And where are we now? And as I said, substantiation has been unbundled. So there's a crazy outpouring of content again. But there's no way to create, have attribution provenance around generative AI content. Where is this coming from? What is the data? How do we compensate it? There's no way to deal with this at the moment. And actually, copyright law only deals with mechanical reproduction. It doesn't know how to basically deal with the generative and creative machine. And our vision is we think there's a more sustainable vision to actually have an IP layer that covers this generative AI content and now actually create a sustainable future where this commons is not getting destroyed, right? And where creators continue to have the incentive mechanism to create content and actually bring the data, valuable data, that the models can be trained on, right? And it really hinges upon two important principles, right? The first is that creators have to actually own their data. Creators have to own their works, right? And not only do they have the ownership of these data, they also should have a very, very easy and frictionless way to set the parameters around the usage of their data, and it works, right? And these rules that they've set, autonomous, self-enforcing rules that they've set, should be readable by machines, should be readable by any LLMs. And the LLMs not only can read these rules in a very frictionless, easy way, computationally and programmatically, they should also be able to write on top of it which means they should be able to frictionless permissionless license this IP and have provenance attribution link it back to this thing. There's all this data that's valuable data and valuable creative works that are getting created out of creators. And this is very different from what we're having now, where there's thousands of legal documents that's actually, in between the creator and the LLM model, right? And you need to get on a one-on-one negotiation with each holder to actually do this licensing, right? So what we think could happen is basically once we have these two principles of having the creators own the data, set the self-enforcing autonomous rules around their works, and machines being able to read those data in programmatic computational way and being able to write on top of it, once that happens, it becomes so much more easier for honest and ethical and open actors to now parse through all these data and all these rules and act accordingly. If you're making a commercial model, you should basically leave out that are banning commercial usage and only data that are authorizing only non-commercial usage. And we think there's going to be a marketplace of ideas fighting, on the one hand, the honest actors, honest models that are actually respecting the enshrined on-chain rights that are set by creators, and there are going to be malicious actors who are kind of taking a risk around using these IPs. And we can imagine a future if there's a global repository of all these IP with a set of terms attached to it, and it's readable and writable by machines really quickly. We can imagine a situation where the honest actors are getting more and more social consensus votes, economic votes by the consumers and the society at large. And we think there's a lot of ways to get there, but but we want to just kind of talk about a workable solution that we came up with today, and that is basically the programmable IP layer, right? And programmable IP layer, we define it as where on this layer, the IPs are captured on chain, and creators can set self-enforcing autonomous rules of engagement around their IPs, and machines can, including LLMs, can read these data, metadata, very easily, frictionlessly, and permissionlessly now right on top of it, right? And I think because all of us are crypto builders here, I want to make this concept more concrete and visceral by giving an analogy to programmable money, right? Programmable money has been about taking away all the financial intermediaries in financial transactions, right? And that created a huge parallel financial ecosystem. You have $1 trillion decentralized store of value. You have $1 trillion of volumes that are getting traded on Uniswap and so on and so forth. So it's a massive parallel financial ecosystem. And this is really possible because now money has a built-in API. Money has code. Money is code. $1 bill. A static $1 bill paper bill that you have in your pocket, you can only transact in some kind of certain stores. But $1 USDT, USDC now, or $10 USD, USDC has a built-in API that can interface with any software and applications out there, and you can create very complex software and primitives on top of these programmable money, right? And you can take it to Uniswap, you can take it to Compound, anywhere, right? So the possibilities of how this programmable money can be used is only limited by the imagination of software developers. In the same way, what we are trying to do is we're trying to build the programmable IP layer in the same way crypto has done, has brought programmability to money, right? And we are going to enable these IPs to programmatically and computationally interface with any software, any LLM models through this process. And you may ask, doesn't NFTs actually allow this, right? I think NFTs have fixed ownership and scarcity. It's a really important primitive that has actually made huge innovation into a concept of the ownership and scarcity of digital media files. But most NFTs are just pointer to digital media file. It's not more than that, right? It does give you ownership and scarcity, but just being a pointer to a digital media file makes it extremely static. It's kind of trapped, right? If you want to use someone else's Bored Ape and actually create an animated short, on TikTok. How do you do that? You talk to like a bunch of law firms. You get an NFT specialist lawyer, and you then do a bunch of negotiation and get the licensing rights, right? And imagine, try to do it at a bigger scale, right? Like, I'm creating a character AI style platform. I want all the Bored Apes Pudgy Penguins turned into a chatbot in a unique way. Like, you have to do tens of thousands of negotiation one-on-one. It's not going to happen. And even if NFT is a huge innovation, which is going to confer and give ownership to creators. And if we want to use this NFT primitive to actually power this generative AI-driven content abundance, there needs to be a frictionless composability, composability layer that's going to interface with these NFTs, right? So because of that, we came up with the programmable IP layer, programmable IP, which is a dynamic extensible with on-chain rights enshrined. And it allows any software, including LLMs, to interface with these NFTs and permissionlessly, frictionlessly extend these IPs, right? And I want to just give a deeper technical breakdown of how this works, and just to kind of make it more concrete. But we really want to take NFTs from the static media files to a programmable IPs that are composable and extensible by any software or any humans, right? And when we say programmable IP, it's on our protocol, it means IP assets. IP assets. So what are IP assets? There are two core components. First is the nouns. The nouns are the states. The nouns are, as colloquial terms suggest, it's the essential metadata capturing the IP. It's not just the IP media files that are pointing to those media files, but it's also actually a set of on-chain rights being enshrined in that IP asset. And how we enable this is actually using the token-bound account model, ER66551. We're using and borrowing and building on top of that token-bound account model so that when a IP creator registers the IP, they get a token-bound account which serves as a portal to our protocol and use all the functionalities that are enabled by our protocol, right? And this basically creates a global IP repository of all the IPs with the set of rights and usage terms attached. So now LLMs or any software, any human can just access this IP repository and brings and actually extend this IP, and it brings legibility to this IP, the entire IP ecosystem, right? Now it's all opaque, it's trapped, we can't track where it is, and we don't know how to use it, right? And the second element is what we call verbs, which is modules. Basically, it's functions, right? It's how you use these IPs, right? And one of the probably the most relevant modules in this context of AI, generative AI, we have is the licensing module. And let's say, as a creator and owner of the IP, you want to set parameters around your IP. You use the licensing modules to actually create a set of metadata that is actually and create licenses that are actually legally enforceable to have a permissionless interaction for your IPs, right? And let's say you are a creator, you are a software, and you want to actually use and license these IPs that are actually have set license and on-chain usage terms. You can just interface with permissionlessly without any lawyers, without any middleman, and just use that IP with the terms that are set by the creator, and you get a licensed NFT in return to actually give you that authority to do this, right? And this brings a amazing composability to the IP, and you actually have derivatives and derivatives of IP, and you see an entire graph, an IP graph. You create that IP graph with these verbs, right? And what we think, there's two core elements of our protocol allows is the programmable IP layer that's actually responding to this age of generative AI. Because now with NFT primitives, you have the ownership around the IP. And with our nouns and verbs, you can actually set self-enforcing autonomous rules of engagement around your IPs. And this metadata is created and designed so that it maximizes composability and readability and writability by machines, right? And any machines, including LLMs, can pass through this data and can set their actions and what they're going to do and accordingly out of this data, right? So, and we don't think we can do all of this alone. We're building this we built this technical rails, but we still need a lot of partners to advance on what we're doing on the AI front at the intersection of AI and content. And actually, some of the partners are actually speaking today, and we are going to unveil what we're working on with these partners later this week in December. But crypto is about really building this primitive together. Just like you may ask, there's going to be chicken and egg problems, right? Like, how are you going to get all these IPs to have on-chain wise registered, right? So we are doing this in a collaborative way, open way, permissionless way with a bunch of partners, and we welcome any developers, application builders who are really focused on attribution, provenance, and compensation of at the intersection of AI and IPs to come and build with us. And when I think about the feasibility of our vision, I really think about what's happened to Napster versus Spotify, because Napster basically made illegal downloading of music really popular, and that issue of illegally downloading music was a very, very big phenomenon for almost 10 years. And it's only when a very small, humble Swedish startups started working with a few record labels and actually showed a better, more sustainable models for creators in a small Northern European country that this issue started to get fixed, right? You gave consumers a much easier and less frictionless way of using content in an authorized way, and actually you see this more sustainable future, and consumers and the venture capitals and the market actually started giving more votes to the vision that Spotify was actually pushing. In the same way, I think we're at an incredible juncture in AI and crypto, because both technologies are maturing, right? AI is about abundance. Crypto is about scarcity and provenance and injecting ownership. And there's so much that crypto can do, and we think the biggest gating problem is IP, and we want to solve this issue with the programmable IP layer. And there's going to be a lot of chicken and eggs problem, but I want to invite any builders who are interested in fixing this problem together to join us. Thank you so much.